All right, let's talk domain and range of these absolute value functions. For every single absolute value function, we want to remember what that domain means. Domain is the numbers that we're allowed to plug in for x. When we talked about those linear functions, there was specific, like real-world examples where we had to restrict domain and range. But for our absolute value function, I can plug any number I want in for x. I can plug in big numbers, I can plug in small numbers, I can plug in positives or negatives, fractions, decimals, zeros, rational numbers, irrational numbers. It doesn't matter. Any number I plug in for x, I'm going to get a y output. So my domain for any absolute value function is all real numbers. Unless we're told specifically that we have to restrict something, the domain is all real numbers. The range, on the other hand, is the y values that we get out when we plug in all of those x values. And if we look at this particular function, this is the same one we did earlier, this function, if I start down here, I don't touch that function until I get to when y is, well, let's see, the vertex of that function was 3, 1. And I'm looking at the y's. I don't touch anything in that function until I get to y equals 1. And then after that, I hit every point in the y direction. My range here is all of the y's that are greater than or equal to 1. So if it's going up, my y's are greater than or equal to whatever the y value of that vertex is. And if it's like the other function that we looked at earlier, I can kind of trace along this function. If I start down at negative infinity, I am going to hit a point on that function all the way until I get to that vertex, then I'm going back down again. Again, the domain for this function, what numbers can I plug in for x? I can put in anything for x, so my domain is all real numbers. Again, I could plug in big numbers, small numbers, decimals, fractions, zeros, positives, negatives, rationals, irrationals. Any number could go in for x, and I can spit out a y. What y's do I get out, though? Well, we can look at the graph and tell all of our y's will be the numbers that are smaller than this y value. That y value was the vertex, which was negative 3, 4. 4 is the highest point this function reaches, so I would say my range is all of the y's that are less than or equal to 4. Okay, so domain, again, with these absolute values, all real numbers all the time. And the range with these absolute value functions is anything greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, depending on which way it's opening, the y value of the vertex. And that's it. All right, so practice these a little bit, and we'll talk again tomorrow.